I'm Melanie Freiria. I work for the Charlotte Hornets, and I'm the manager of guest experience. So in my current role in a normal setting, is COVID aside, basically in charge of hospitality, in-game guest experiences. For example, our first time kids program, first time guest program, our special occasion celebrations, birthday celebrations. I'm in charge of James Jordan's tickets. So he is our chief operating officer, Michael Jordan's brother. He has 4 tickets a game that he decides to upgrade a family. So I'm in charge of choosing that family, upgrading them to his seats right behind the bench. So again, just guest enhancements per se, along as service recoveries. So anyone has a bad experience at a game or at a concert, then we bring them back into the building, try to enhance their experience, make it better. So it's a little combination of customer experience, customer service, along with in-game programming, and making sure that we kind of make the guests feel like they're at Disney. It's pretty much how we run through it. In a COVID world, right now, prior to working on opening the building back up, just been in a lot of committees of how to reopen the building, how do we take these programs that we have and take them virtually, right? How do we monetize these programs now? They used to be free. Now, obviously, there's no income being that we have no fans. So they're trying to find ways to monetize these programs as well. And then a bunch of COVID measures. So now preparing the arena on social distancing efforts, the staff, training all the part-time staff, um, making them feel safe to come back. So a lot of the obvious things you see at a grocery store happening, but in a sports and entertainment kind of capacity. So making sure that the building is up to standard to open up. It's a lot, but again, it's been an experience. It's been a big learning curve. So I'm a little more creative, a little more personality driven, face to face contact with people, kind of going off that, and I've become a more anal and black and white, Excel spreadsheets and all this other stuff. More kind of operations, less service, which is a part of my job, but it was never this big. It was always service first and then operations. Now it's kind of the other way around while we get used to this new normal that we have. So my entry path is very different from your typical entry path in sports. Usually, in the grand scheme of things, nine teams. I'm gonna go on the NBA. Usually has 220 to 250 employees. Not that many employees, right? So the biggest departments are sales. So usually you'll start off with an internship in a sports team or a venue, and most of the time that then goes into a full time opportunity into that department. If not into that department, then to the sales department is usually where they hire the most amount of people because the turnover is larger since you grow faster. You need to fill in those spots. I, on the other hand, had no internship prior in a sports venue, a professional sports venue or team. I worked at the arena my junior and senior year at Hagen, and my freshman and sophomore year, I was a manager for the women's basketball team. So that's where I got my sports background from. And then I did communications and sports marketing at St. Joe's. So I graduated, wanted to, change of scenery, leave Philly. So I chose Charlotte. I had my cousin live down here, and it's a little easier to break into sports in the South due to that college football is pretty much the biggest sport down here. So you don't have your Yankees, your Knicks, your Sixers, your really really big teams. Professional sports are a little smaller in this area that I'm in. So then I got a part-time job with the Hornets, just doing like guest services, ushers. I was kind of a service ambassador, just regular game day stuff. I reached out to the VP of the department. I was like, hey, like if you ever need anything, please let me know. I'd come in for free, file some paperwork, whatever you need me to do. And she took that to heart because not a lot of people reach out to her because she's a little intimidating. And then so she brought me in as the founder's receptionist, which is our executive office receptionist. So then I started working part-time in the executive office. So it was pretty cool. I got to meet Michael Jordan, James Jordan, all the executives, the C-suite of people before I even met any coordinator. So again, that's when I say my kind of route is a little different. And then after that, a full-time position came open in that same department. And then I got promoted as a coordinator of guest services at the time, full-time position. And then I grew into a coordinator of guest experience and staffing. And then now I'm the manager of guest experience. So no prior internships apart from working in the arena. I kind of fade it take till I make it. Just talk my way through it. I use my assets, right? I speak Spanish, so I use that to my advantage, and um, kind of work my way up. The more people trust you, the more people like you, they're more willing to give you work. So I kind of took that to my advantage. And this is skills all throughout sports, not department based. One thing is when you start working in sports, you realize all your skills are cross functional, cross departments. Um, Not one skill really is needed in one department that's not needed elsewhere, right? So, really big thing in sports is your work ethic. I work for not only for the Hornets but for the Spectrum Center as well. So it's we may have 3 games a week, but we also may have 2 concerts, right? So that's 5 nights you're working on top of your admin work. So it may be 65-hour a week, 70-hour a week. You have to be okay with that, right? And that skill set did come for me in college, right? So I was a manager of the women's team, so I was traveling with the team, had the same schedule as the women's team, and also had a full workload, but I didn't have the tutors as players had, right? So I learned how to balance my time properly, and it really paid off because now I'm really fast with doing my work. Is because I didn't have that much time, so now it's like I'm like programmed to do it like fast. Um, it is a male dominant industry, so obviously at St. Joe's, the sports department is also male dominant. So you kind of learn. I learned at St. Joe's to always be a voice in the room. Never really sit back and just like listen to the men talk in the room. I don't want to get obviously into gender, but it is a big thing in sports. Obviously, I had the pleasure that my department is heavy in women, and the women, the higher up you go, the more women there are in my division, which is really good. But it doesn't go the same for other divisions in the arena, right? Our C-suite has one woman, and the rest are men, and the executive level it goes the same way. So always be a speaking person in that room. And my professor at St. Joe's, I think 4 out of 5 of my classes were with Stephanie Trice, which is my mentor, and I absolutely love her. The best teacher ever. And then my other sports class was also a woman. So I don't think I ever took a man as my teacher at St. Joe's, which is really interesting and I think about it. But it really helped me like understand that it's still possible to make it in the sports area. You don't have to be a guy, right? Um, it's and women are not seen as stronger in this industry, right? There's a little more battles to choose because I work in the WNBA, right? I work in the NBA, which is more male dominant. So I think at St. Joe's that time management piece was really really big, as well as having women in that role model space that like help me understand that it is possible. And then it transferred into my boss right now also being a woman and being an immigrant. I'm from Puerto Rico, so it also helps to have that kind of connection. So that women empowerment piece was very very important. And again, I know I'm gonna get experience, but this goes around across the board. Take those sales classes. I took a sales class, and I was the only sophomore in a class of seniors. I had no idea it was a senior class until I got in there, and it was before it was a requirement for the major. And I was scared, right? And I'm not currently in sales, but I can sell myself. It's kind of how I got the job. I did sell myself and my assets. I had no prior experience. This was my first job at the Hornets. So sell yourself. Try to get those sales classes because if you can sell a pen, you can pretty much sell yourself. Um, Engage in Hagen. If you can't get into working for a sports team, I know there's limited positions in that, right? But there are marketing internships within Hagen. And reach out to the department, any sports department over there, and be like, hey, do you guys need any work? Filing paperwork, even the smallest admin stuff, but at least you get a flow, a know the flow in those sports world, right? It is very different than let's say banking. It's a little more high pace, a lot changes really quick. It's a little more laid back and casual. But with that being laid back and casual, you have to learn the boundaries there are in sports, even if it's laid back and casual. So I would recommend, highly recommend trying to get in Hagen. And they also know a lot of people that work in the professional setting, right? So recommendations go a long way in sports, right? It's who you know. The supply in sports is so low, but the demand is so high. Everyone wants to work in a professional venue, professional team, but they only have 200 positions, 250 positions per team, right? So the more people you know, the better the chances you are in getting in a role, especially if you're like me and I started in guest experience. I studied marketing in college, right? So if I were to want to get into that marketing space now, I can reach out to Professor Trice or my boss right now, and who I know, who they know, it can get me an interview. So really, really try to get close to your teachers or the people that work in the arena, coaches, even players, right? Some of my really good friends played basketball at St. Joe's, and they're resources, right? Like Natasha Cloud is a WNBA. I use her as a big resource if I ever wanted to work in the WNBA or do what she's doing in the community relations, right? Even the men, Langston Galloway has a foundation, right? So if I wanted to transfer into that foundation role, like I can reach out to Lang or Professor Trice, right? So really, really sell yourself again is like the biggest thing. Make yourself known to the people that have those connections, because again, supplies will be low and demand is very, very high in the industry. It's not like banking where there's millions of banks, right? It's you have 40 teams in the NBA, and that's pretty much it. So apart from gender, um, I'll speak to women in this first. If you're a woman in sport, use it to your advantage. Don't see it as a disadvantage, right? Speak on how you need to diversify your department, right? If you have a department of sales, let's say, and it's all men, no women, you might be that one person that attracts to someone's wife to bring them into a game, right? Use the gender roles or gender norms that you don't really like, but use them to your advantage and try to get in that way. Same thing with race. I am from Puerto Rico. Obviously, appearance wise, I'm a little lighter skin than some Puerto Ricans, right? So that may be a preconception to some people, but I use my Spanish as an advantage, right? At the Hornets, I'm one of like two people that know Spanish in the business side, and I'm the only one that translates everything. So when in my interview, when I first had the job, I made a point. I speak Spanish. This is a Latino marketing effort I can create for the Hornets. It had nothing to do with my job at all, but it's something you have an edge over someone else. Okay, so if you're not um, let's say you're not from this country or you were raised in a different culture, use that to your advantage, especially nowadays when all the teams are trying to diversify and be inclusive. Gender, race, culture, language, nationality, it's all really, really important. So the lower on the norm you are, if you're not a guy working in sports, the more you can use those detractors as your advantage, right? You just have to turn them into positives. You can't just say, "Oh, I didn't get the job because they chose a guy over me," right? You just didn't sell your advantages you have as a woman in that position that you could use it as. I haven't really had that many barriers just because there's a lot of women in my department. Um, but I have experience working with other departments that are male dominant. Your voice kind of gets lost in the mix, or you say something and the guy says it and the guy gets the kudos, not you. So the only thing you can do is when that happens, write it down, right? And then after the meeting, hey, I just wanted to follow up on my idea that I brought up in the meeting. Here it is, and now it's in paper, right? Just little tips and tricks like that to cover your butt, you know what I say? But just try to use those disadvantages, like the social disadvantages, into your advantage. Just find a way to twist them over. So what I did on LinkedIn, I don't have a book or any kind of solid resource like that, but on LinkedIn, try to reach out to coordinators and maybe some managers, senior coordinators before you reach a vice president or a director. They're more likely to answer your questions as a coordinator because they're wearing your shoes 1 or 2 years ago, right? So reach out to all those coordinators on LinkedIn, and then if you're in their area, even better. Let's say you reach out to someone at the Sixers, it's a coordinator of like guest experience or marketing, you're more likely to get that internship if you had talked to them prior, right? So talk to them. I mean, again, they're closer to your age, so you have that affinity bias. It's a little easier than if I were to, even at my position, if I were to email an executive on LinkedIn, they might not answer because I mean I'm still a manager, not any higher, right? But the closer they are in age to you, the better. That's what I've experienced, and LinkedIn is a really, really good source of that. Just follow a bunch of teams on LinkedIn. Make LinkedIn like your sports hub. I open my LinkedIn, there's nothing but sports. I mean, absolutely. There may be some Red Bull, like some entertainment kind of programs, but sports entertainment, right? So also follow venues. Live Nation's a good resource. Live Nation hires a lot of people part time, and if you work for a venue, you can also work for the team. This is what I do. I work for both. So I think LinkedIn and making sure you're targeting the right people, not overreaching, be a little more realistic of who's gonna be your resource from then. I would have liked to get an internship. I'm not gonna lie, just to get a little more experience and know what to expect. So if someone would have pushed me a little harder to get that internship, or maybe even made it a requirement, I would have known what to expect in sports prior to entering the world of sports. It is dog eat dog. It's a lot of work with. To be completely transparent, the pay is not high, especially at the beginning. Again, because the supply is so low, the demand is so high. So they kind of use that to their advantage, and you also don't need to focus so much. Like, let's say you want to do marketing, don't focus so much on like getting a marketing job, because in my role, I guess experience, I work with marketing a bunch, right? And you can, it's like being in college. You can still take market, you can still take different courses in college, as to why I can still work at different projects in my full time job, right? So don't be so head on and only applying to jobs that fit your major or the category that you want to be in. Even in sports, let's say you want to do marketing for sports, start off with the agency or start off at like a nonprofit, something smaller, because all teams have a foundation. So if you work at a nonprofit, that can easily transfer into working to a sports foundation. So don't be so dead set on working for not only a team but that specific department. Um, and this is nothing I did, but a recommendation to everyone: don't trash talk any teams or anything on social media, because they'll find it. Especially now, it's easy to do. Not so much when I was interviewing, because my interview with my boss was different again because of my route to the Hornets. Right, I met her before I got my interview. So if you're applying for a job, they may look at your Twitter and see if you're trash talking that team. That doesn't say you can't have a favorite team, right? I work for the Hornets. I'm a fan of the Hornets, but I'm also a fan of another team, right? It's okay, but don't trash talk any teams, so you don't never know where you're gonna end up working or who you might end up working for. Um, People trash talk Michael Jordan all the time, but he's the owner of the Hornets, so that's something that's a no go, right? If you openly trash talk any one of the Jordan family, it does not a good look to hire that person. So just be mindful of what you post on social media, because they will find it. So, I mean, it sounds so like redundant
Thank
because everyone says it, but again, if I didn't have the relationship with my boss prior to interviewing for the job, there probably would have been some searching on social media or something about it. It's just part of the recruiting process nowadays, the vetting process. Before you even get to the manager, they vet you on all accounts, right? Because they don't. You're a representation of the team as so much as the player, right? The player obviously gets more camera time, but in the venue, you carry on a badge with a credential. You're also part of the Hornets. I mean, or whatever team you're working for. So you have to be mindful that you are the brand, even if you're not at work, and that goes for any job. But especially if you're customer facing or if you work for a lucrative kind of a brand it's easier to kind of see an NBA team versus a, let's say, a milk company, right? It's a little easier to be like, so this person at the Hornets said this, that must be true about Michael Jordan, kind of thing.